First of all, I'm so pleased to welcome Ian Barker. So Professor Ian Barker, HonFSE Chartered Environmentalist. Ian is Vice President Vice President of Environment at the Institute of Water. He's also Managing Director of Water Policy International. He's a non-executive director of the Society for the Environment and of the Water Industry Forum. He's a visiting professor at the University of Exeter Centre for Water Systems and president of the Earth Science Teachers Association. Ian has over 35 years experience in water and environmental management and regulation. He's worked in the UK water sector since before its privatisation in 1989, after which he moved to the environmental regulator. At the Environment Agency, Ian had overall responsibility for water planning, regulation and management, as well as fisheries, biodiversity and land management across the whole of England and Wales. Ian was also responsible for the water company's programmes of environmental investment totalling over £1 billion per year, and he also had oversight of their long-term plans for water supply security and drought management. In fact, Ian was key in the introduction of compulsory household water metering in areas of serious water stress in England. He's been an expert witness at numerous Lords and House of Commons select committees and in various inquiries on water and environmental issues. He's an expert advisor to the OECD, a founder member of the Global Water Governance Initiative, and he's worked in more countries than actually I think we've got time to list, but from relatively local Netherlands to very far afield South Korea and Brazil, from South Africa to China and Tanzania, where he's given advice to governments and various different parties on water and land management. Ian includes clients in his portfolio such as UNESCO, development banks, the UK government, other governments around the world, water companies and major companies and consultants. So I'd like to say congratulations to Professor Ian Barker, Chartered Environmentalist HonFSE. You are now recognised with HonFSE as a dedicated and consummate professional in environmental activity, and the Society for the Environment recognises your achievements by hereby awarding you Honorary Fellowship. So congratulations, Ian.
Well, Ian.
So this is where Phil would normally be doing whoop whoops, I think.
He's whooping in the chat, Will.
Oh, has he done it in the chat? Well done. Ian, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you for your very kind words, Will. I feel incredibly honoured and grateful to have been recognised by my peers, and I would like to thank colleagues at the Institute of Water for nominating me, and also colleagues in the other organisations for supporting that nomination. I have to say, I've reached a time in life where I'm not easily surprised, but I was very surprised when I heard that I'd been given this award, not least because I sit on the Honorary Fellows panel, and all of this was happening without me being aware of it. So it's good to see that the panel doesn't leak. And if I could just have a moment, Will, to explain that I was reflecting on this award and also my career, and I thought it could so easily have turned out very differently, because by profession I'm a geologist, and as I was graduating, all I wanted to be was a petroleum geologist, looking for oil and gas and exploiting hydrocarbons. So don't judge me, because that was in the last century, but I couldn't find a job in the oil industry that I wanted to do. So I thought, well, water's much like oil. And I went to work for Yorkshire Water. And the first job I was given was I had my very own drilling rig to go drilling boreholes around North Yorkshire. And the intention was to see how much water could I pump out of the ground without it drying the springs up. So it was a purely financial equation forget about the environment, but is it actually worth pumping water out of the limestone to put into a river to suck out further downstream? And the main river I was responsible for potentially drying up has its birth at a beautiful limestone spring. It's home to brown trout and was just about pristine. So I asked the dumb question, which I still ask, which is, how much water is it safe to pump out of this river before something bad happens? And nobody could answer. And just thinking about the theme of World Environment Day today, about ecosystem restoration, I was thinking, thank heavens we didn't go ahead with those boreholes, because now we'd be looking about how do you restore that pristine ecosystem to something like its original state, and it would be impossible. So fundamentally, isn't it better to protect and conserve ecosystems as far as possible? So then you don't have to go through the effort of restoring them, because you'll never get them quite as they were. But to do that, it means setting environmental limits, understanding what a safe limit is. And I was thinking particularly about water quality and water resources, but it applies to so much more as well. Setting a safe limit and enforcing those limits. And the problem for all of us as environmentalists is it appears to be cheaper to degrade and exploit the environment rather than to consider sustainable alternatives. And I think that's why collectively there is still so much more to do to look after what's left of the environment that is still fragile and precious and in a good state, as well as the theme of tomorrow, to restore what's currently degraded. So, Will, I was very honoured to have played a small part in all this, and even more honoured to have been recognised by colleagues at the Society of the Environment. So thank you, Will, and to everybody else who's had a hand in this.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. That's a wonderful story, and your story of, I suppose, poacher turned gamekeeper is a great one, and hopefully inspirational for others, and that you can use that as an inspiration. I'm sure you do in your work. I was just wondering, sort of building on that, Ian, how do you think that the Society for the Environment, and perhaps particularly SocEnv registrants, such as yourself being a CEnv, how do you think we can make the most beneficial impact? Is there a single action or line of thought or direction of travel that you would encourage people in your position to be going in?
I think perhaps the most important thing is to use the skills that we have as environmentalists to help others recognise that there is, this is the wrong analogy, more than one way of killing a cat, but there are alternative solutions, nature-based solutions, ways of going with the grain of nature to deal with some of the challenges that we face. And I recall the earliest piece of career advice I was given when I was working for the Water Authority, which was, Ian, you can never expect to have a career in the water industry because you're not an engineer. The assumption being that you needed to be an engineer because you need to build things in order to treat water and so on. Now, all of us are recognizing nature-based solutions are a way forward of dealing with poor water quality, supporting low flows in rivers, and managing flood risk. And that means environmentalists working alongside engineers as well as lots of other disciplines.
Well, that's a good point. It's a team game, yeah. And I noticed that Dougal's keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A. Dougal, do you want to come in with anything that you've managed to pull out of the many contributions there?
We haven't got as many contributions as I would certainly like, so I do encourage people to get involved and ask your questions. Ian, I've just got one very, very quick question, and it's inspired by your choice at the start of your career. I think it's possibly a myth, but we maybe don't dispel the myth enough that you can have a good career in the environmental sector. You don't have to chase oil or banking or do these other things to have a good living. You can. It is a career for all. It's an inclusive profession. Do you agree that it can be a good career and rewarding career in all aspects, and you understand what I mean by that compared to others?
Yeah, it depends how you define a good career. Dougal, for me, a good career is one where you look forward to getting up in the morning and going to work, and you come to the end of the day and the end of the week feeling you've done something worthwhile. And I've been so lucky in the career choices I've made that I have always felt that way. And all through my career, I've kept learning, because you never understand everything or as much as you like. So I think it's possible to have a great career, as an environmentalist. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious that, as a career choice, it's absolutely essential. The critical thing is, for me, that environmentalists, of whatever stripe, are recognised as professionals with a contribution to make to some of the challenges facing the planet